Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Fallujah Empyrean out September 9th on Nuclear Blast. The album has 10 tracks, 52 minutes in length, and this is the band's fifth full-length studio album. They are an American technical death metal band. A band that's seen a few lineup changes over the last couple of records, this one being no different. And anytime you see this sort of volatility in the lineup, this sort of constant change in the lineup, you're always wondering what kind of impact it's going to have on the record, on the sound, on the atmosphere, on the overall design. Well, I must say that the impact that it had on this album specifically is a positive one. The album feels more complete than its predecessor, definitely less experimental. But from a design point of view, you have a record that has a beginning, middle, and end. And it also allows you to grow with it. The record feels like it's growing on its own, but you're adapting so well to the movement that the album has, to the new pieces that the album is offering, that you're growing at the same pace as the album is moving. This allows you to get better into it, to understand the album better, and at the same time it allows the album to oversimplify itself. You just feel like it's an easier listening experience all around, even though they're adding elements with every single song. So it's a very interesting process because it's not moving across a flat line. This album is actually growing exponentially, but your understanding of the album is keeping everything balanced and is keeping everything grounded. I love this design. I love this sort of experience. It just allows me to feel deeper into the album with every passing song. It allows me to feel more connected with the album, and therefore it gives me a much better experience all around. As far as the sound is concerned, this is definitely a technical death metal album from Fallujah. They went back a little bit to their roots, to their technical death metal sound, and they decided to keep things very simple from that perspective, but at the same time adding a lot of layers and a lot of texture. This record, sound-wise, is very easy to digest, is very easy to comprehend. You don't feel like you have to dive super deep into it in order to get exactly what the album has in store for you. It has a sense of simplicity. The way the production of this album is put together, it allows you to digest all the different elements. The drums, the guitars, the bass, the vocals. Everything is coming at you in an overly simplified way that it's just there for you to digest. It's just there for you to consume. But underneath it, you could see the texture, you can see the layers, you can see the substance that allows the album to still be very robust in its sound, to still have a very thick, heavy sound, powerful sound, and really pushing that technical element into the forefront, allowing to be a calling card of the entire existence of the soundscape of this album. I feel like there is a little bit of room from some prog elements here and there in order to even expand a little bit more on that technical side of the band, push the boundaries ever so slightly. And I'm not necessarily asking to take steps back and go to something that we saw in the previous record, but perhaps insert them in a different way, in such a way that is not intrusive, that doesn't feel like it's forced, that feels perhaps a little bit more natural, so that the overall soundscape can feel even more elaborate, that can take you even in deeper journeys than what you're going to be taking on this album in the way it's put together. Now, within the soundscape, I have to mention three elements, but two above all others: bass and guitars. But I want to start off with drums. I want to give the drums some love because I really enjoyed the drums on this album. I felt like they were very consistent, very robust, very powerful. A lot of the heaviness that you're going to get and the consistent heaviness that you're going to get throughout the entire album really comes down to how the drums sound, to how they're put together, and the impact that they're having on the other elements. And then when it comes down to those two other elements, guitars and bass, the bass on this record has a little bit more pop, has a more defined pop, it has a more defined inclusivity in terms of how the whole sound comes together. It's not there just for the sake of being there, or because it was missed, or because it had to be there, or you want to add a little bit of a level of technicality that really requires the bass to pop. I felt like the album had more of an organic bass sound. It was there when it needed to be there, but it always added value to the overall experience. It added value to the soundscape, it added value to the content of the songs, and it made the tracks feel bigger, more powerful, more defined all around, really adding to the overall technicality that this album offers. On the guitar side, they helped the thickness that you get from the drums when it came to the heavier sound of this record, but they also added melody, they also added elements that stretched out the footprints of the tracks, that made these songs elevate themselves in quality and experience and atmosphere, pushing the boundaries, making them feel almost space-like at times. You're almost navigating through space, trying to find all the little pieces that make these songs, and you try to bring them together into your hands so that the path in front of you becomes a little bit clearer. The guitars do a lot of that. They really allow you to navigate. They really allow you to lose yourself in the overall melody, in the overall experience, but still be heavy at the same time in order for you to have this sort of duality throughout the entire album. Heaviness and melody, creating the technical side, mixing it in with the death metal side, allowing these two worlds to coexist in nearly perfection across every single song from start to finish. Magnificent job guitar-wise throughout the entire record. Now, vocally, the album is what I was expecting it to be, because for an album like this, for an album that has this sort of approach, that has this growth and linear movement at the same time, you need some vocal consistency, but at the same time you need some elements that break that consistency. But you have to be careful on how far you go with breaking that consistency. Vocally, the album was very strong. I liked the delivery, I liked the new vocalist, I felt like he added value to the experience, and he has the right tone, the right delivery for an album that has this sort of death metal sound with this technical push into it. It really focuses your efforts in making the album feel as heavy, as impactful as possible, allowing the vocals to keep some of that consistency alive and well, which then forces the guitars to be a little bit more diverse and to move the needle a little bit more from track to track. Adding a few sparkles here and there, some clean vocals here and there, some layers, some texture, some backing vocals. I enjoy that because it didn't become the routine. It didn't become the norm. It became the extra, the spice, the flavor that changed how you perceived some of these tracks, and also allowed some of those songs that had those elements in them to kind of break away from the pack and feel slightly different from everything else around it. You want to get to the end of the album enjoying the journey, enjoying the growth, seeing the growth of the record, and not necessarily feeling like every song was exactly the same thing. Like I always say, very hard to tell the forest from the trees. It's not the case on this album musically and vocally, but I felt like vocally they made an effort to really push the envelope in that arena, to kind of spread it out a little bit more, to give it a little bit more diversity without changing too much of what the DNA of this record required, which was consistency from start to finish. Overall, a more consistent record, a more complete album, a return to form as far as Fallujah is concerned. While the previous record was more experimental, they allowed themselves the room to grow, to try different things. This album sees them come back to a more familiar territory, one that they excel in it, and this record really feels like it has strength across every single track, giving strength to the overall collective as well. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Into the Eventide. Great intro. I love how it leads you into this song. You feel like you're taking baby steps. You're dipping your toes in the water before the song really gets started. And then when it gets started, you feel the heaviness, the guitars, how they push the drums together, and then the melodies that the guitars have on top of that heaviness, allowing them to intertwine perfectly. You see all the different layers that the song offers, but you see them in a very simple way, which allows you to better understand the track, which allows you the song to feel oversimplified in its processes and what it gives you in the atmosphere that it provides. Great vocals, also some layers in the vocals, some texture to the vocals to create those subtle ebbs and flows, those subtle changes that don't change the overall feel of the record or how you perceive the album, but have a very important impact on giving specific fingerprints to specific songs within the overall design. This one is one of those. The vocals really do well on this track. It's a heavy song. It has still a lot of melody in it. It allows you for movement. It allows you for growth. It has ups and downs, and it also moves side to side. It has a lot of movement all around. Next, you have Duality of Intent. Heavy, consistently heavy, very powerful, musically and vocally. It's a song that just feels substantial. It's a robust track. Then it comes into this bridge that feels very proggy, feels very stripped down. It brings the technicality, but it leaves the death metal behind. It's more of a technical portion, proggy technical portion of the song that just breaks form. It breaks away from what you saw before, which was consistently heavy, consistently moving, a more brutal sound all around. As it moves away from this bridge, you see the song bringing both worlds together. What was there before the bridge and what's there in the bridge, allowing the track to have a much different atmosphere, a much different way of moving, a much different technicality to it. Everything changes. Sound, vocally, everything morphs. Everything moves exactly where this song is going. And you see that movement. It creates a sense of shedding a skin and becoming a new person while you're still the same person as you were before. That's how this song kind of moves. That's how this song kind of grows, how the way the song evolves all around. Last but not least, definitely the last, because this is the last song on the album, Artifacts. Great sound, heavy, thick song, weaving lighter experiences with heavier experiences, giving you these jolts of heaviness, taking that away, infusing a little bit more of a mellow sound, of a mellow mood, bringing the mood down completely, then giving you another jolt of heaviness. It's a track that has chaos in it. It's chaotic by nature, but it's not uncontrolled chaos, it's controlled chaos. So you're able to exist within the song, you're able to digest the song and appreciate the song and never really feel disconnected from it, because everything that is happening, while chaotic, it kind of makes sense. You kind of find your path in this chaos. You can find your path within this darkness. So it's a very interesting song from that perspective. It has a lot of heaviness, but it still has a lot of melody. It has a lot of movement, both musically and vocally. Just a really interesting song that brings in a lot of progressive elements. It brings in a lot of technical elements, and it brings in a lot of death metal elements. It's a song that feels like a hybrid, like they brought a little bit of their previous record into this track, but they found ways of making it fit into a more linear motion, into a more linear design that better suits the overall design of the record. But it's no surprise that this song comes at the end, because it's a song that feels different from everything else, that has a sense of being a little bit more creative, if you will, more exploratory, if you will, and because of that, it has to be towards the end. You want this to be the climax of the journey that you've been in, and not necessarily a ripple within the experience or within the path that you were on from the first to the last song. This is it. This is Fallujah with Empyrean, out September 9th on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.